I never thought I'd be that guy, the one with the crazy neighbor story. But here we are. It all started when I bought a nice piece of land, about 10 acres, right next to a new, upscale housing development. My land wasn't part of their fancy homeowners association, and I made sure of that. I'm a simple guy. I like my privacy, my space, and my big toys specifically. My excavator, I use it for all sorts of projects around the farm, from digging ponds to clearing brush. Life was good, quiet, and peaceful. Then, the HOA queen, let's call her Karen, moved in next door. From day one, Karen was a piece of work. She'd peek over the fence, making little comments about my unmanicured land. She once had the nerve to say my property was bringing down their home values. I just laughed it off. My land, my rules. But the real trouble began when the HOA decided to build a community walking trail. Their planned route was fine, until they realized it ended abruptly at the edge of my property. Instead of finding a different solution, they just assumed they could extend it right through my land. One morning, I found surveyors on my property. I politely asked them to leave and explained this was private land. They were understanding, packed up, and left. I thought that was the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. The next day, I got a certified letter from the HOA, written by Karen herself, who was the president, of course. It was a formal-sounding demand, not a request, stating they would be utilizing a small, unused portion of my land for their trail. They even included a little map showing a path cutting right across my future vegetable garden. I called my lawyer immediately. He drafted a very firm, very clear cease and desist letter. We sent it back, thinking that would be the final word. For a few weeks, things were quiet. I started prepping the area for my garden, feeling victorious. But Karen wasn't the type to give up. She saw my quiet compliance as a weakness, a sign that I could be pushed around. The following weekend, the HOA was having some kind of big community picnic. My property line is clearly marked with a fence and several no trespassing signs. But apparently, those signs are just gentle suggestions to people like Karen. I was out of my workshop when I heard the sound of cars. I looked out and saw a stream of SUVs and minivans pulling onto my pasture, parking all over the place. My jaw hit the floor. There must have been 20 cars on my land. Primera, why like it over? Trying to keep my cool? I found Karen directing traffic like she was a valet at a 5-star hotel. I walked up to her and said, "Excuse me, what is all this? This is my private property." She just smiled this smug, condescending smile and said, "Oh, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a few hours. Our community event ran out of parking. We're just borrowing your empty field. It's for the community." I was fuming. "This isn't community property, Karen. This is my farm. I need you and everyone else to move your cars right now." She actually rolled her eyes at me. "Look," she said, pointing a perfectly manicured finger in my face. "We'll be gone by dark. You don't even use this part of your land. Stop being so selfish and think about your neighbors for once." The sheer entitlement was staggering. She then turned her back on me and went back to directing another car onto my grass. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The polite farmer was gone. It was time to get creative. I walked back to my barn, a plan forming in my mind, a wonderfully devious, perfectly legal plan. I fired up my pride and joy, my beautiful yellow excavator. The engine roared to life, and I felt a wicked grin spread across my face. I drove it out of the barn and headed straight for the pasture, which was now a makeshift parking lot. The partygoers watched me, a little confused, but nobody seemed too concerned. They probably thought I was just going to do some farm work. I started at the far end of the pasture, well away from the cars. I lowered the huge bucket of the excavator and started digging. I scooped up massive mounds of rich, dark earth and piled it high. I worked methodically, creating a huge berm of dirt. At first, people just stared. Then, as the pile of dirt grew larger and larger, a few nervous glances were exchanged. Karen, however, was oblivious, still playing the gracious host. My target was a shiny, new, white SUV parked defiantly near the center of the group. I knew it was hers. It just screamed HOA President. I drove the excavator over and began my masterpiece. I didn't touch her car. I was very careful about that. Instead, I started piling dirt all around it. Scoop after scoop, I built a perfect, inescapable mountain of soil enclosing her precious vehicle. I piled it high in the front, high in the back, and high on both sides. By the time I was done, her SUV looked like it was in a dirt bathtub, with no way out. The party music had stopped. Everyone was just standing there, watching in stunned silence. Karen finally noticed something was wrong. She saw the crowd staring, turned around, and her face went from smug to horrified in about 2 seconds flat. She let out a shriek that probably scared birds in the next county. "What have you done to my car?" she screamed, running towards the scene. I calmly shut down the excavator, hopped out, and leaned against it, arms crossed. "This?" I said, gesturing to her dirt-imprisoned SUV. "I'm just doing some landscaping. You know, on my private property. You said yourself, I don't use this land, so I figured I'd start a new project." She was sputtering, her face turning a shade of red I had never seen before. "You can't do this. I'll have you arrested. This is vandalism." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "it's not. Your car is completely untouched. I just moved some dirt around it, on my land. And speaking of arrests, I have about 20 cases of trespassing I can report right now. See all these license plates?" I panned my phone's camera across the field of illegally parked cars. The other homeowners started to look very, very nervous. They realized they were caught in the crossfire. Panic set in. People started scrambling for their cars, trying to get off my property before they ended up in a dirt pit of their own. It was a chaotic but beautiful sight. Karen stood there, helpless, staring at her buried SUV. "How am I supposed to get my car out?" She whimpered, the fight completely gone from her voice. I gave her a little shrug.